right. Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of Off the Cuff Interviews. Today's guest is Taylor from Taylor Talks Comics. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it. I'm happy that you're here. I'm very excited that you're here. And yeah, we're going to talk some comics. I have a couple questions here for you, mostly about comics or YouTube related, that. But I do have one that is not comic book related or YouTube related. It's
Ooh,
kind of just an oddball question that I ask all my guests. So
all right.
we'll save that one for closer to the end. Let's jump over to the chat real quick, though. We have Beyond Comics. Hope you're doing well. Beyond Comics is coming on the show this Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'm very excited about that as well. So to kind of kick things off here, let me ask you, what are you currently reading?
A lot of things.
Okay.
I do. I get a lot of review copies, especially from like Fantagraphics, which is my all-time favorite comic book publisher. So I'm in the midst of. I have a whole stack of books from them that are coming out in the next couple months that I'm currently working through. Also reading Din from Richard Corbin. Have you ever read Din?
I have not. Let me highlight you real quick because I do want to take a look at that.
This is a just the dust jacket. I'm actually not going to be able to show much in here because it is kind of I don't know. It's some R-rated stuff.
Gotcha. Let me jot that down though. That seems like something I might enjoy, especially if it's more R-rated.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. Have you read anything from Richard Corbin, the artist?
I've not. No.
Okay, he's a style unto his own. Like when you see it, like there's there's no other comic like it. He passed away in 2020, sadly, but he's been making comics since the late 60s, and still to this day, there's still nothing that looks like his comics.
Wow,
but the best way to describe it would be like Din would be like Conan the Barbarian fighting Lovecraftian monsters in an art style that looks like it should be spray painted on an Astro van in like the 80s.
Okay.
So
interesting. I like that pitch.
It's good stuff though. I'm reading that. I got a review copy for volume 5 of that. So I'm trying to reread through volumes 1 through 4 before I do that.
Are those still in print? The first
volumes?
Yeah,
they're new. They're newer printings. Dark Horse just got the rights to do the Richard Corbin library.
Okay.
And so far they've come out with 6 volumes. There's 5 volumes of Din, and then there's this Murky World, which is a one and done story that he did. Okay. This is one of his later stories, but they're like these really beautiful hardcovers.
Yeah, that's really nice.
They're all on Hoopla too, if you want to try it out on Hoopla.
Okay. I unfortunately my local library does not support Hoopla. I think it's like because I'm from upstate New York, so I think it's a upstate New York thing, like a mid York library thing, and we don't have Hoopla. We have Libby, which is similar.
Oh yeah, I have that.
There's not so many comics on there, unfortunately, but
yeah,
it is what it is, I guess. So what else are you reading? You're reading Den and what else?
A bunch of Fantagraphics books. I had this book comes out next week called Tedward.
Okay.
For Fantagraphics, collecting a bunch of comics from Josh Pettinger with this blockheaded character here. Really, really beautiful collection as well.
Interesting. Okay.
Psycho Cleveland. I don't know if he's ever in your chat, but he
is. He pops in here and there.
Yeah, he's a big fan of Josh Pettinger, and this is my first time reading like a full length of his. I think I've read some of his comics that are in some anthologies and things, but I finished this last night. It's really, really good. It comes out next week.
Okay.
On my channel this week, I reviewed recent reads. Santos Sisters. My video for this came out today.
Yes, I saw that.
And check this out.
Oh, nice.
Look at that cover reveal.
That's nice. I like that.
Yeah, this is a really cool book. Let me show you some interiors here.
Yeah,
it's done in like this Archie Comics pastiche. Let me get this out of your way. I don't know if you're familiar with Archie Comics.
A little bit. Never really read Archie Comics though.
But it's done with like adult humor. Like this is definitely not for kids.
I see.
And there are these 2 superhero teenage girls, and they have like all these in jokes. Like this guy right here. His name's Rob Liefelteeth.
Okay.
So there's like some like Easter eggs that comic fans will enjoy. It's not like R-rated. Like there's nothing like no sexual content or anything, but just like the jokes are definitely adult and humored. But that's really, really great. This came out this week as well.
Awesome.
And
Let me
oh,
get that.
Beat It Rufus. This came out this week as well. My video for this came out on my channel on Monday.
I haven't watched it yet, but I did see you that in the Discord.
Yeah, my channel's Taylor Talks Comics, as you can assume. So anybody go check that out. I think he has it linked below.
Yes, there is a link to that in the description.
Yeah, so this is Beat It Rufus by Noah Vanskyver.
Okay.
It's his latest work, and it's really cool. It's about this down on his luck old time rock and roller from yesteryear that's like middle aged and struggling for money. So he has this grand plan that he's going to go hunt down his old record label to get the royalties that he was owed. And
gotcha. Interesting.
A bunch of hijinks, but Noah Vanskyver, I think he's one of the best storytellers in comics. Like his cartooning is really, really great.
Let me
and the pacing of his stories is just so funny. There's so many comedic moments throughout this, throughout all of his comics, really. But this is a great gateway into Noah Vanskyver if you've never read anything from him.
I have not. I'm gonna have to write that down. This seems interesting.
And then lastly, my video for this will come out tomorrow. This is Baby Blue.
All right.
And this is one of the weirder comics I've read lately. But I love weird comics. It's one of the, if someone describes a comic as weird, that's like instantly triggers me as like, I need to read that.
Okay.
But like you can see like the art style is like this blue and white kind of rhizoglyph looking thing. So this takes place in a dystopian, not too distant future where it's like a fascist state. I don't know if they call it Sweden, but they certainly allude to it because the author, the cartoonist that does this is Bim Erickson. She writes and draws the whole thing. And they live in this fascist state where the government like controls mental health. So like the main character, she right in the beginning, like she's seen crying in public by a police officer. So she instantly like is put into this mental health facility and forced to take these drugs and things. And then through that, in this mental health facility, she comes upon this person that's in the resistance versus the government. And it's kind of this clandestine group that's trying to fight against the fascist state.
Interesting. What was that one called?
It's called Baby Blue.
Baby Blue. Okay.
Yeah, it's by Bim Erickson. And this is her debut graphic novel. She's appeared in a bunch of other art things, but this is her first full-length graphic novel.
Awesome.
My video for that will come out tomorrow.
Sweet. I will look forward to that. Awesome.
So lots of things is what I'm reading, actually. But
lots of things. Do you read? I'm curious. Do you read any prose books, or is it usually just graphic novels, comics?
Almost exclusively comics. If I read a prose book, it's usually comics adjacent. It'll be like history of comics type book, like nonfiction. But like prose fiction novel, I've not read in over a decade.
Okay, interesting. I read a lot of more nonfiction prose books. So like I don't read fiction novels. I like the fiction to be with comics, I guess, if that makes sense. And then for nonfiction, I'll read prose. And it's for me, I find it to be a nice balance. But how did you get your start with YouTube? And I know you work for or help out with Near Mint Condition, right? With this social media guy there.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that. How you got your start in on YouTube? Let's start there.
I think it was 2019-ish. Well, actually, let's backtrack a little bit. My first ever endeavor in podcasting or any sort of content creation was I did a podcast called Taylor Talks Football. That was my first endeavor. I went to school for journalism at Penn State and had this like thought that I would become some sort of like guru about football. I don't know. That podcast lasted a couple years, and then that devolved into a podcast I did with my friend called Podcast Prevails, where we reviewed superhero or comic book movies. That lasted a couple years, and that was a lot of fun because my friend, he's like my best friend from back home, but he moved to Spain at the time.
Oh wow!
So like our way of kind of connecting and staying in touch was to do this podcast, which was a lot of fun. But then that went defunct. So then, I don't know, around 2019 or so, I started hopping on YouTube and found a lot of comic book YouTubers and I like a lot of them. Like there's like Omni Dog. I'm a big fan of him. I'm good friends with Jess now at this point. Omar. Like I found all these YouTubers, but they weren't talking about the comics that I love. Like I love Marvel DC comics as much as the next guy. But the
Right.
more like independent, smaller published stuff is what I wanted to find on YouTube, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So then my idea on YouTube was to create the channel for the content that I want to see, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I still do Marvel DC content on my channel, but I hope my goal is to bring people in with that content, and hopefully they stay for the smaller published stuff, and maybe I can open people's eyes to other comics. That's one of my favorite compliments ever in comments is when someone says like, whoa, I didn't know about this book and I bought it totally based on your recommendation, or like that's like
Sure,
the
yeah.
best compliment.
Absolutely. Let's jump over to the chat real quick. Fifth of Jack Gaming, how's it going, Lucas Taylor in chat? Hope you're doing
How's it
well.
going?
Thank you for being here. And then we have Psycho Cleveland, aka Harvey Picar's Ghost. Now, I would like to hear Taylor's thoughts on the problem inherent in forming relationships and getting free comics / essentially being sponsored by publishers, distributors, or stores. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. Because I
Okay.
do have a journalism degree, so there is a responsibility involved in that. Especially when you're doing reviews, you're for journalistic integrity. You're allowed to receive a free copy or a free ticket to an event or whatever, but you're not supposed to receive anything beyond that, or else the relationship's compromised. So, like, I get free books from Fantagraphics, but that's it. And the guy, my contact there, he emails me. He's a really cool guy, but it's totally professional. Like, he doesn't say like,
Right.
hey, can you pitch this book a little bit harder than that? Like, he has never once tried to control any of my content or say anything
Sure.
of like try to control like if I say anything negative or positive.
Right.
It's just purely here's this book, review it kind of thing, which I appreciate. And as far as saying negative things, honestly, like Fantagraphics is my favorite publisher. Before I even was receiving review copies from them, I don't know that I had any negative things to say about any of their books anyways. There was one time, one of their books, they put the wrong volume number on the spine. And that was the first time, and I got it as a review copy I received. That was the first time I was like, dang it, like I have to say something in my video. I can't not say something to the viewers, but also I don't want to piss off Fantagraphics, but I have to be honest because, like,
Right. Yeah.
I can't think about, I don't want to piss off Fantagraphics because if I piss them off based on that, that means they don't want to keep the professional relationship. They're not wanting me to have honest reviews. So I was just honest and I explained it in the video, like the spine number's wrong, blah, blah, blah. Showed them all. And I sent whenever I do a review copy, I always send the publisher the link because I want them to see that I make good on it. Like they send me the book. I want to show them like, here's my review.
Right.
In case they don't subscribe or whatever. And I sent it to him and he said, all he said was like, we shared it around the office. I'm assuming that's what they're sharing around, but he never gave me flack for it. And I said like, why'd you say that or anything? That's part one of like review copies. As far as like being sponsored, that's different because that's a different relationship. And it does get hairy too if you're being sponsored from one publisher but not another. So like if you're being sponsored by publisher A, obviously you're going to inherently say positive things about them. But then publisher B, like, do you give them the same treatment? It's like it's a hairy situation for sure. And one example of that I'll say is like Omar over at Near American Edition is sponsored by Marvel. I think he does a really good job of like towing that line. Like when he's doing a review copy for Marvel that is sponsored by them, like the videos, so he is getting more than just the review copy. He's getting like a sponsorship also. He'll just flat out just tell you like an overview of the book. He calls it an overview instead of a review. But if you get him on a Saturday streams that he does, like his Q&As, he'll give you his honest thoughts on books. Even if it's a Marvel book he reviewed, he'll tell you like, yeah, I didn't really like that story. So he still keeps it like honest at times. You just have to hit him in the right moments, I guess. But there is a difference there, Harvey, as far as like being sponsored by and getting review copies. And it's up to the content creator to keep that relationship professional. So like if Fantagraphics started saying like, hey, we don't like that you're being too honest in this review, or try to control any of my content in any way, I would have to sever that relationship, I would think.
Right. Yeah.
Unless it turned into some sort of sponsorship gig in which case I'd be honest with the viewers, like I'm being sponsored by. But yeah, I don't know if that answers Harvey's question or your question, but
I think that answers it. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's interesting. I've never really thought about that on the content creation, sponsorship, getting free copies. I've never really thought about that too much. So I appreciate your insight there. Harvey Picar has another question. What are some of your favorite journalists or critics? That's a good question. Do you have any?
yeah, most of my favorite journalists are outside of comics. Unfortunately, comics itself, journalism covering comics is not great. It's never been great. I think the best it's ever been is probably the Comics Journal, which is, but even that's compromised because the Comics Journal, I don't know if you're familiar.
No, I'm not.
It's the, it's sort of, I guess they still have physical copies, but it's owned by Fantagraphics. So Gary Groth started off as a comic book critic, and he would, before Fantagraphics even existed, and he would review comics and talk about how, and he was like ruthless with it. Like he would, because back then, this is like 70s. So this is before a lot of the independent publishers, and he was ruthless with Marvel and DC, talk about how he didn't like their comics and how they're trash and blah, blah, blah. Comics can be better. And then came along the Hernandez brothers and Dan Klaus and these other cartoonists that he then started publishing their comics. So then it became like this compromise thing. It was like, you're critiquing comics, but also you own this comic publishing company. And I think he's done good balance as far as like, he will allow honest critiques, because he doesn't do anything as far as writing for the Comics Journal anymore. At least he will occasionally, maybe, but mostly he's kind of hands off of it.
Okay.
But he'll still allow honest negative reviews of Fantagraphics books within the Comics Journal. So I think he keeps it honest that way. But you still can't deny that compromised position that they're in. But beyond that, like comics journalism has always been awful. Like as far as like Access Media goes and all those hot button terms that people like to bring out, like we'll do you a favor if you cover this kind of thing. Like that's not journalism in the purest sense. So, and I would like to get into it, but it's just like, where's the money, in that? Like there's nobody's going to pay me to be like the ultimate comics journalist, even though I would love that gig. Like that'd be my favorite gig ever.
Right, yeah.
And I would try to do it with integrity and not be compromised, but it just, there's no money in it. And there's no money in that aspect of comics. But as far as my favorite journalists go, Ariel Helwani of the MMA, I watch MMA a lot. So he's probably one of my favorite journalists. And he talks a lot about journalistic integrity and things. He's been compromised at certain times and things, but like for the most part, he keeps a pretty even keel. My favorite critics, I don't know, like who's a critic? I guess my favorite critics for comics, I'd say, would be like my favorite YouTubers on comics.
Sure.
For the Love of Comics and Earl Grey are my two favorite like kind of YouTubers on comics that cover a lot of comics that either I don't know about or I do know about. So they're, as far as like tastemakers go, like those are two guys that like if they say comics really good that I never heard of, I'll be willing to try it out. But yeah,
it's interesting because I do have to say, if I watch one of your videos and you say this comic's good, check it out, I trust you. You and Bunk, I will say, are like the two YouTubers that if you guys kind of give it your stamp of approval, I know I'm like, okay, chances are I'm gonna dig this one. I've Jess Omnidog used to kind of be that for me, but he's steered me wrong a couple times, which is okay. We
of course,
it's all subjective. Like with the Black Cat Omnibus, I didn't hate it, I didn't love it, and I did kind of buy it from his review, and he gushed about that book. And I thought it was good, but
that means a lot though. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I will say I'm much more of a indie comic book reader as well. That's just the comics I love to read and just get gripped by. Not so much Marvel, DC. I obviously do own quite a bit of Marvel and DC, but it's definitely more the indie books that keep me coming back to comics, I will say. So I appreciate you having a channel really more geared towards that for sure.
Yeah,
I
it's
think that's
it's a
awesome.
tough gig too because unfortunately you don't get a lot of views on YouTube for covering those kinds of things.
Sure.
I do kick myself because when I first started, if you go back to my earliest videos, like the first year and a half I did YouTube, my videos were getting like 10,000 views, like 5,000,
Mm,
like they were getting really good view counts, but I was just so inconsistent with it and I didn't
right.
stick with it. Now I kick myself because like I would have loved to have those numbers. And I think it was like the pandemic was a height for that too, as far as
Yeah,
like,
no,
but I could have
absolutely.
grew my channel during that time and I didn't. But yeah, they don't unfortunately don't get a lot of views, but again, I try to still mix in some Marvel DC stuff to bring in new viewers, and hopefully they stick around for the other stuff. But
Absolutely. Well, I'm curious, what were those initial videos that you were making that got 11,000,
they were
10,000,
like
whatever?
your typical absolute omnibus overviews. Like I think my biggest ones early on were like the Tim Sale, Jeff Loeb Batman omnibus,
Okay.
Watchmen Absolute, the Ninja Turtles Ultimate Collection, like the Eastman Laird original Ninja Turtle comics. That's one of my biggest videos, I think. I think I had a Black
Okay.
Hammer one in there too. Black Hammer is one of my favorite series, but
Black Hammer, you said?
yeah.
I like Black Hammer a lot too. I have the nice library editions back
Oh yeah,
here.
me too.
And yeah, I really enjoy that series. Um, let's see. Let's jump over to the chat. Harvey P. Cars goes, have you read Psychotic Reactions and Carburetor Dunk?
No, I haven't. I've not. What are those?
I'm not too sure. Harvey P. Cars Ghost, please let us know. We have Paperback Dan in the chat. Hope you're doing well. Is that a Lego Daily Bugle? It sure is. I like Legos a lot. They're just too expensive, so I have too many Legos, to be honest. I don't have room for all the Legos I have.
I'm about halfway through my DeLorean Lego set. You can kind of
I
see it
think I
back here.
saw that you made a post on Instagram or some social.
Mhm.
Maybe it was YouTube. I can't remember
Yeah, and
about that. Yeah,
they shorted me the stickers though, so I got like halfway through it, and then I didn't have any stickers for my like the a couple of pieces. So I had to order them through Lego. They sent them to me. I just need to finish it now.
gotcha. I was gonna say I that's shocking that happened. But yeah, I'm sure Lego would replace it if you reach out. So
Oh yeah,
that's
they're real good about that.
yeah,
If you like
that's
have a
good to
missing
hear.
piece or whatever, they'll replace it for you.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see here. I also prefer slightly more independent books. My pull list hasn't had much Marvel or DC in years. I actually have another question for you because I feel like some people are very divisive on this. I'm curious kind of where you stand. Do you classify Image and Dark Horse as indie still, or do you think that's evolved into something else now?
I know I knew exactly what you're going to ask me, and I laugh because Harvey Picar's Ghost has a very strong opinion on this. Honestly,
Oh,
I'm not precious with labels. Like
sure.
I think it's silly when people like fight and are so precious with labels because it, it's like because I grew up like as a kid in high school going to like in the punk scene, like going to like punk venues and stuff every weekend, and it was always like the dumbest arguments over like is this band truly punk or not, and like
Right.
I always hated it, and there's like this like gatekeeping thing too, is like oh that band's not really punk, they sold out, they're on a major label now, and it's like shut up, like can we just all just enjoy the music? As far as the argument goes, I know people usually use that label as like a broad swath of like anything that's not Marvel or DC. Um and it doesn't bother me. Like I understand what they're getting at.
Right.
Like so like as a gatekeeper thing, I'm not like that's not really indie. But then even as like you break down the word independent and it can mean so many different things. If it's independently published, if that's what you're implying, and it's like self-published,
Right.
then okay, that's something else. I just usually call that self-published. If it's independently owned, a lot of Image stuff is still independently owned. Like if you go to Skybound, like Transformers GI, that's not independently owned. Those are
Right.
licensed
Yeah.
properties. But like Rick Remender stuff, he owns all that. He can take it to another publisher after his agreement's done. And then even like you independently own it to where if it gets adapted, this is something I really like about Image that Skybound doesn't do actually, which really annoys me.
Hmm.
I don't know why that's an imprint of Image because they don't do this. But if you are not with Skybound, but you're with Image proper, and you have a TV show, like Robert Kirkman benefited from this. So he
Okay.
came out with The Walking Dead, and then
Right.
when it was made into a show, Image made no money off of that show. They made money off of like the increased sales off the comics because the show is popular. But as
Right.
far as the show goes, they made no money off it. All the money was made to Robert Kirkman and Charlie Adlard and Tony Moore.
Yeah.
So
I
like they
believe
keep it
so,
separate.
yeah.
You do own it. You independently own it. So the word independent doesn't mean independently owned or independently published. I don't really care either way. But I know what people mean, and it's just one of those things that you have to use discernment with. If I see like a comic book YouTuber that usually dabbles in mostly Marvel DC books, and they have a video come out saying like my top 10 independent books, and they mean Image and Dark Horse, I'm not gonna like comment and say like, those aren't independent, but
Right.
I'll take it with a grain of salt. Like I don't know what they mean, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So it's a loaded argument, I think, right? With
Yeah, just
a loaded debate rather.
I'm not too precious to labels. I'd say the same thing with like genre labels. Like Paperback Dan knows this because he's a friend of mine.
Okay.
We're both in a fellow group chat of comic book fans, and there's this dumb argument over whether Stray Dogs, the comic book, was considered horror, like a horror comic.
Mm,
And some people were like, no, it's not. I wasn't scared at all. And I'm like, that doesn't mean it's not horror. Like horror can mean anything. Like to
right.
me, that's a whole genre into itself. Like I usually keep pretty broad terms with these things, these labels. But like Nightmare Before Christmas to me is like a horror movie. Like it's not like a slasher flick. Like there's obviously subgenres you can label it under, but like there's
Yeah.
definitely horror elements in that. So I usually have a more broad term with these labels and things, and I'm not precious about it.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. I would argue probably Stray Dogs is a horror book.
I'm glad you said that. Dan, him and I agree on this one. And he actually had Tony Fleece, the writer, he met him at a con and
Mhm.
recorded a video of him saying, like, yes, this is a horror comic, and like sent it to the group chat.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like horror is all subjective too. You know.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it has
Um,
to scare you. It just means,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. That thing is so cool. I'm bummed I missed out on the Bugle, but I don't have the space for it. I believe the Daily Bugle still. I think it's still being made. I don't think it's retired yet. I think it is soon though, so you still could get it if you wanted to. It's a great display piece for sure. DKSA video with Jake was one of the best breakdowns of a story I've ever heard. Thanks, Taylor. Earned my sub. I actually missed that one. I know that was I think it was a couple weeks ago now.
Yeah, it was.
The Dark Knight Strikes Again breakdown.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. Yeah, the video is Jake and I kind of, I guess, met, or our first conversation was about Dark Knight Strikes Again, and it was in a Facebook group, and someone brought it up, Dark Knight Strikes Again, and I put in the comments like, I think that comic's really misunderstood, and then Jake was like, wait a minute, what do you mean by that? And I didn't know of Jake's channel at the time, but he had a video where he was talking about how awful the comic is.
Okay.
So the whole point of this, it was like 2 years in the making. This was a couple years ago, but we finally did the video a couple weeks ago, and actually had a full like slideshow presentation talking about how I think it is misunderstood and what I think Frank Miller was going for that was missed by a lot of readers and things. I don't think it's a masterpiece by any means, but I definitely think it's misunderstood, and what Frank Miller was going for was not what people. I think people are expecting something different.
Interesting. I still have to watch that live stream. It's up on the Brave and the Boys channel, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's in their live tab. And I'm going to do a separate video on my own channel that's more of a concise and edited version of the same concept. I was just trying to let that video linger on his channel a little bit before I didn't want to like take from the
Sure.
the viewers.
No, that makes sense. Harvey Picard's Ghost, Psychotic Reactions and Carburetor Dunk is a collection of Lester Bangs reviews and articles for Cream Magazine, basically. I do not know what any of those things are, to be honest. But I'm intrigued. Interesting.
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, cool. Taylor Talks Comics Discord debate. Yes.
Yeah, that's the debate about the word independent in comics.
Punk is a genre. Genres are inherently difficult to define and create big gray areas.
Yeah, same thing with what I
Yeah.
was talking about with the horror
Yeah, I
genre.
think there's
Like,
a lot of overlap when it comes to
yeah.
genres and subgenres and all that. So, all right, here we go with Harvey Pekar. Independently owned isn't even a term and doesn't really make sense. There's already a term creator owned for this. Yeah, I think maybe creator
There
owned would
is,
be-
and if people want to break it down to creator-owned comics, they certainly can. I think part of what, and I know this sticks in the craw of Harvey Pekar's ghost. I think part of the reason why YouTubers and comics critics in general use the word indie comics as like that broad term to mean anything not Marvel or DC is just because it's simplified.
Yeah, I would
So
agree.
like if you see a YouTube thumbnail, it says top 10 indie comics, you might want to click on, but like if it says like top 10 comics that are creator owned, like that's going to be not
It's
so succinct.
it's less marketable, I feel
But
like.
I totally understand, Harvey, like your complaint. Like when I see people consider Transformers by Daniel Warren Johnson an indie comic, that one kind of annoys me because it's like that's not even independently owned. Like it's a license. That's no different than like Tom King's Batman. Like
Sure.
as far as like ownership goes and things, like Daniel Warren Johnson doesn't get any royalties from that, I don't think at all. So
That's a bummer. I have yet to read that.
I mean, he might. I don't know his royalty deal. I'm just saying, like he doesn't own. Like if they made a movie
doesn't
based
own
off
it.
of that, like he
Yeah.
wouldn't get anything from it.
Yeah, I get what you mean. My issue with everything that isn't Marvel or DC being called indie is that it makes it harder to tell when people mean Image or something that is self-published. Yeah, that's interesting. I do feel like almost because I have seen videos titled like top 10 Image comics. You know,
Mhm.
like that's kind of its own own category, I suppose, of comic books now.
Yeah, I have a video called "Top 10 Non-Superhero Comics,"
Right.
and that there's certainly different ways to distinguish it, but
Yeah.
yeah, I totally understand, Dan, when you're talking about it, and I think it's kind of Harvey's argument as well. Like, I don't care either way on it. Like, that's what I'm saying is like, I'm not gonna give someone flack if they use indie to mean Image or Dark Horse, but I also know in my heart of hearts that like when something's
It's
truly self-published, self-sold, self-made DIY kind of thing, like I know that's like the most indie thing you can be, but
right.
it's not an argument that like I care to spend energy on, I guess.
Sure. Coley, thank you for being here. I'm rereading The Walking Dead right now, the comic where it all began for me. I've never really thought about it before, but I don't think Image / Dark Horse are indie these days. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's an argument to be made either way, but I think it can lead to like a slippery slope of gatekeeping when it comes to comics too.
Yeah, which I don't like at all. Like
Yeah,
that's
I
the
don't
thing.
like that either.
Like in the music scene, and I hated that. I hated any sort of gatekeeping of like, I've been listening to that band for 4 years. You can't listen to them. Like that stuff would always annoyed me. It's like if I like something, I want as many people as possible to like the
Yeah,
same thing. So like if I read this comic that I know no one in my inner circles ever read or heard of, I want them all to read it. Like
right.
I don't want to have this like secret thing in my back pocket. It makes me feel cool or whatever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like for me, and I'm sure this will resonate for you too, like my goal with YouTube and being more comic book oriented is to get more people to read comics because I see the potential and what has been with comics and just how great of a medium it is. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
so
That's my number one goal on Comics YouTube is to put a spotlight on the cartoonists that I love.
mhm,
And selfishly, so that maybe people will buy their books and they can make more comics. So I can read
right,
more comics from those people that I love their work.
absolutely,
Because that's my
absolutely,
number one thing is like when I read a comic that I just absolutely love and it's like creator owned or indie or whatever you want to call it, I want that cartoonist to make more comics.
yeah,
So like Noah Van Sciver is like he's one of my favorite cartoonists today, and he hustles like he is constantly putting out new comics all the time, whether it be a mini comic that he self-publishes and sells on Instagram, or it be something published by Fantagraphics, or Abrams Comic Arts has published some of the stuff. Trying to think of who published Maple Terrace last year. It was like a newer publisher. Uncivilized Books. This is a Noah book that came out last year.
I think remember you talking about that either in one of your videos or maybe it was on a stream.
I think it was well, I probably talked about it on a stream for sure. Well, I was on Omar's like favorite things you read last year video.
That was up there.
Yeah, that was up there too. This
Okay.
one's fun though. This is a good gateway to Noah Van Sciver. It's a autobio comic of when he was a kid. So that's him as a kid. So there's all kinds of Easter eggs from the 90s too, if you're a kid growing up in the 90s, of him playing with like certain action figures and things. But part of it, I don't know, his older brother is Ethan Van Sciver. I don't know if you know Ethan.
I've heard of him. I know he
was the artist on Green Lantern for a number of years.
Okay, gotcha.
We don't need to say any more about him, but his older brother's in the comic though. Like at one point, Noah steals his Spawn comic, and then it gets like destroyed, so he has to like go hunt down that same issue of Spawn, and it's hard to find because it's the 90s and everyone's hoarding comics at the time, and it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's been on my list to check out for a while now, for a few months, and I just haven't gotten around to it. So I'm going to try to bump that up on my reading list here. Paperback Dan says Stray Dogs is a horror book, and then also Coley agrees. I'm glad we can agree on that.
Yeah, Coley's in the same chat that we're both on. Coley, Dan, and I were all on the right side of history in that argument.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Let's see. Paperback Dan says I never understood gatekeeping. I'm totally with Taylor on this. I want more people to enjoy the thing I love. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, it just makes zero sense to me about the gatekeeping stuff. I don't know.
It's so just annoying, and like, I don't know. I hate it. Like, even just like judgmental things too. People like, you've only been reading comics for like 2 years. Like, to me, when I find out someone's like a brand new comics reader, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many things I can recommend to you now.
Right.
Like that's exciting to me. But
yeah,
I don't know. Gatekeeping in general is annoying. It's just people trying to feel people with their egos, I guess, trying to be cool. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm curious. We talked a little bit about your start on YouTube, but I'm curious about how you started with Near Mint Condition. How that came.
So
if you don't mind sharing.
No, absolutely. So I've been doing social media work for Omar for I think almost 2 years now, maybe 3. I don't know. It's been a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I did notice, which I don't know if this is. I usually see holes when I see people like a publisher that I enjoy, or a YouTuber I enjoy, or even like a retail store that I enjoy. Whenever I see them have like flaws with their social media, I'm like, man, you should be so much bigger on your social media platforms. So I met with Omar. He said on on one of his Saturday streams, like offhandedly, like, man, I'm looking for someone to help me with social media or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was coming out of college at the time, because I'm a late student. I went to college like in my early 30s, I think.
Okay.
But I was just graduating, and I was like, hey man, like, I just graduated the journalism degree, which had a lot to do with digital media and marketing and things too. And I think I could help you out with your social media. And then we met, and I was like, at the time, I think he only had like, I think it's close to 50,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is a lot, but now he's up to like 110. But his social media platforms only had like 1,000 followers on Instagram and Twitter. And I was like, this doesn't make sense to me. How do you have 50,000 subscribers on this platform, but only like 1,000 over here? Like, you should be pulling in more people through these channels. So I just kind of pitched my ideas to him, and it took off from there. Yeah.
I'm curious also about, because you mentioned you went to college later in life, and I think maybe that's the smarter choice, is to wait until maybe you have a better idea of what you want to do. I got my degree in film and cinema, and if I could redo it again, I would definitely not get a degree in cinema. I would do something else. Like I have other interests now, and things I want to explore in life. So I guess I'm curious. Did you know going into college that you wanted it to be a journalism degree? Did you have something else in mind?
Yeah. So in my teen years, I became a manager at McDonald's. That was my first job, was working at McDonald's, and then I worked my way up to management before I even graduated high school. and then I worked my way up to general manager. So I was running the whole restaurant, and I did that for like 10 years, 11 years. And it was around that time that we had our only kid. I have a son. He's 10 years old now. It's around that time, and it's just like working in that industry or working like 60 hours a week, and I was just like, I don't want that kind of. I want to be home with my kid. So I wanted to change kind of career paths. So then I started working at a hospital where you work like 3 12-hour days a week. So you have 4 days off, which is really nice. So maintain full-time hours.
Right.
And I used those 4 days off to then go to school and went to school full-time. So there is pros and cons to it, because it was much later in life to where I was able to figure out what I wanted to do. Because I agree with you, like this whole pressure where we like pressure kids to know what they want to do the rest of their life when they're 18 is insane to me, because it's like
it is.
Your life expectancy is 75. So it's like we want you to map out 50 years of your life. I don't know if I math's right there, but 50 years of your life today when you're only 18 and you're impressionable and you're not even fully developed. And so not that I like my own son, like I think I want him to do whatever he wants, but like I'm not gonna tell him not to go to college if he wants to when he's 18. But I still don't want to pressure him, like figure everything out. Like you have to figure out your major, figure out what you want to do. That's crazy to me. But I do. It was hard because I did have a kid. I am married. I was working full time, and going to school full time is like it was hard, for sure.
Yeah.
But like it would have been easier when I was younger and single and not a dad.
Sure.
But I also didn't have everything figured out. So to answer your question, when I went to school, it was purely for journalism. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I did. Like when I was trying to figure out what I want to do with my life before I went to school, I knew what I wanted, like what I wanted to major in.
Interesting.
And I went through Penn State. I did all of my schooling online, but it was Penn State that I had my degree in. So
interesting. I feel like too, as you get older, when it comes to education and stuff, you take education and learning a lot more seriously. Like when in my early, I'm 24, but when I was 18, 19, 20, I didn't care about college. I mean, until I graduated, I never really cared about the classes. I mean, there were a few. I took some comic classes, which were awesome, and some other classes here and there that I enjoyed more and cared about what I was learning and really tried. But like, I do wish I redo it in a sense, just to put more effort into it. Like right now I'm reading a book about philosophy, and I've never read a book. There are too many books about philosophy. I don't know too much about it, but I'm really enjoying it. And I'm like, I'm taking notes. I'm trying to learn from it. And that's something I never really, I guess when you're younger, I feel like it's harder to apply yourself in college or in school in general.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like because I did start college when I was 18. I was trying to do college and the McDonald's manager thing. And I was living on my own, and I was like living paycheck to paycheck. Like I didn't even have internet at the time. Like it was like those like, I mean, it wasn't like the Stone Age. It's like internet existed, but I wasn't able to pay for it.
Right.
So it was just a time where I was like, which one's more fruitful right now in my immediate life? And it was the job paying me rather than college. So I didn't take it seriously, and I only went not even a full semester. So yeah, when I'm older and I am paying for it, and it's like taking from my family's income to do it, and taking from my family's time, like my time with my son, like I took it way more seriously for sure. But I think I focused everything I did in college on what I wanted to do afterwards. So like if I had to write like a 5-page paper on some sort of marketing campaign, in one of my classes, I did it on the 30-second Rob Liefeld Levi jeans commercial. I wrote 5 pages on that one commercial, because it was like, it's comics related. Like I was gonna have some fun with this.
Yeah.
Like whatever. Like when in high school, it was always like, what do my teachers want to know? Like what do my teachers want to see from this paper?
Yeah.
But when I was older, I was just like, no, I just want to do what I want to do, kind of thing. But
yeah, no, I get that completely.
There's pros and cons, and then also like being I think I was like 13 or 14 years removed from high school when I started college. Taking math classes at that with all those years in between wasn't the easiest. So
sure. I get that. It's funny. I'm a substitute teacher, and yesterday I was subbing, and a kid came up to me and asked for help on their math math questions, and I was trying to help them. And finally, the student was like, I'm just going to go next door to the math teacher and ask her for help. I'm like, okay, good idea. And she comes back, and the whole thing's crossed off. And that's like my work essentially. It's like no good. So I get that. Math has never been a strong suit of mine. I've always leaned towards more history, the English, the arts, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's funny. I guess kind of getting back more into comics here. What's a comic that's impacted you the most? Which one impacted you the most, would you say?
Impacted me how? Like,
let's say emotionally. Which one really like moved you?
to try and think of like recently things that I think. So I did read this book called Tinder. I actually have it right here. I pulled some books off because I thought you might have some questions. This one is a wildly horror, like body horror kind of comic, and it didn't like stick with me. Like I could show off some imagery or interiors. It wasn't like this emotional thing that made me feel like changed my views on life or anything like that. But the way it evolves into the horror and body horror, like I don't want to say like this is a hard book to review. I want to do a video on my channel on it, but the less I say, the better, I think, because it moved me in a visceral way where it stuck with me for weeks after I read it.
Oh wow!
But it's just like in a horror kind of way. And it's like it talks about like the people's obsession with relationships. Like you find someone that you're in a relationship with, and then when they start to leave you, and like you still have like that obsessive like pull to that person.
Sure.
It really definitely sat with me for a number of weeks. But I don't know if like the most impactful ever, like it's a hard thing to answer.
I know it's kind of a loaded question. It is.
No, I mean it's not. I don't know. I read so many different things.
What about like Marvel or DC that impacted you the most? Maybe that will.
I think I don't know. This probably isn't the definition you're looking for, but like a book that impacted me in a way that opened my eyes to things was probably anything with Jack Kirby. So like Jack Kirby's Fourth World, his New God stuff really opened my eyes to what comics can be, especially on a cosmic level. Things like Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol, I think opened my eyes to how weird comics can be, but still be great. Because again, like I love weird comics, so I think that kind of opened my eyes to that. Like Alan Moore unlocked a lot of kind of British comics to me, where then I started going down that path. Yeah, I guess that I don't know. I've had different comics that impacted me in how I like what comics I read. Like I've had like Junji Ito was the first manga that clicked for me. So then when I read that, like I started reading a bunch of manga. I talk about this on my channel a lot, like Jeff Lemire's Roughneck. I didn't read comics for like 5 years in my mid-20s, early mid-20s. And my wife got me a gift certificate to our local comic book shop for my birthday. And I wanted to get something non-Marvel DC because like by that point, like trying to keep up with the continuity of Marvel DC and being 5 years removed was just like this impossible thing for me. So I wanted to buy something non-Marvel DC. So I bought, and I wanted to buy Jeff Lemire's Essex County because I used to be a big pro wrestling fan. Still kind of dabble in watching it, but regardless, one of my favorite pro wrestlers, though, Zack Sabre Jr., was going on about this comic Essex County on Twitter. My comic shop didn't have it at the time, but they did have Roughneck from Jeff Lemire. And I went home and sat down and read it in one sitting. And then the rest of my birthday weekend, I spent going to different shops looking for anything I could find with Jeff Lemire's name on it. And so that was impactful in that way. It kind of got me back into comics. I think my answers probably be a lot of different things like that, like what impacted me and shifted my gears towards something else in comics. But
gotcha. Awesome. Jeff Lemire, I haven't read too much by him. I have read Essex County. I enjoyed that. And the other one you said was Roughneck, you said?
Yeah. I don't know if I have that handy.
I know Jeff Lemire, he's coming out with a memoir, autobiographical memoir this year, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's like more of a monograph. I think it's gonna be like part art book, part biography. I don't
Mm,
think it's any like new comics material. I could be wrong, but
okay.
I
You
think
probably know more than me. I haven't looked too much into it,
I think
but
it's gonna be more of like a monograph, which I do love those kind of books. Like I have a lot of those kind of monograph books about older cartoonists that I really enjoy. That will be like
okay,
part old comics from them, part artwork, part biography, and it's a good way
sure.
to learn and soak in about that cartoonist life and kind of thing. I think that's what that book is. I could be wrong, but no, I love Jeff Lemire. Like I have not read everything he's done. I kind of fell off a little bit. He just comes out with so many. He's another cartoonist that hustles.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
but Black Hammer is definitely my favorite series from him. Absolutely love Black Hammer.
Black Hammer is great. I'm not crazy about Jeff Lemire's artwork, I will say, but I do like his storytelling quite a bit. His artwork's not like a deal breaker for me by any means. I still will read something by him. Um, let's jump to the comments here before I get too far behind. Rena Spawn, what's up? Shout out to Taylor. Taylor, you got me into Silver Age, early Bronze Age because of you. Happy, awesome, love to hear it.
I love that.
A Fifth of Jack Gaming. I spent 7 years at McDonald's, 6 of it being a manager. They offered me at my own store. Instead, I put my 2 weeks notice in. Got sick of the drive, to be honest.
If I could look back, I wish I would have taken the same route. You know, I had a high school teacher that I really like, one of my favorite teachers I ever had, and he was like this older guy. Like, he was so old, my parents had him as a teacher.
Oh wow, okay.
And when I was a senior or junior, I guess, he was asking me what I was going to do, and I was like, "Well, I just got promoted to management at McDonald's. Like, I think I'm going to kind of go that route and then see how that goes, and then move on in my life." And he's like, "Just be careful. Like they'll chew you up and spit you out." And I was the impressionable young teenager I was like, "No, like the people I work for are great. Like they'll take care of me." And then after the fact, when things happened, and I was just like, "Man, I should have taken that guy's advice." Just one of those
Sure.
moments where like. And as you get older, you'll realize this. Like when you start to give people advice that are younger than you, and they don't listen to you, they're like, "Nah, you don't know what you're talking about."
You're right.
Like I look back on those times when I was younger. I'm like, man, I was totally that kid that didn't listen to people when they're older and they're trying
Right.
to give me wise
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah. I get that. We have Kane. I hope you're doing well. Uh, Captain Underpants, thank you for being here. Is Fish Flies by Lemire any good? I've not read that. Have you checked that one out?
Captain Underpants. That's my son's favorite comic books of all time.
Okay.
Fish Flies. I read the first issue when it came out, and I loved it. And I love Jeff Lemire's artwork, and any of the comics that he writes and draws, I feel like are my favorite of his usually. Besides Black Hammer, that might be the exception. But I think the hardcover is coming out this week or next, or maybe it's already out now.
Okay.
But I do want to pick it up. So I've only read one issue. I enjoyed it. I want to read more, I guess would be my answer.
Awesome. I jotted that down so I don't forget. We have James Abel in the chat. Thank you for being here. Rena Spawn says, so it's both your fault the ice cream machine broke.
That's one of my favorite post McDonald's things, because like when I was working at McDonald's and the ice cream machine was always breaking, I was like on that side of the counter, and I didn't understand it was like this meme where people would like
right
this until afterwards, and I'm like, that's so funny. Like
yeah. So it's not true that the McDonald's employees just like fakes it being broken. It is actually broken a lot.
Yeah, and I mean at my restaurants at least, I don't know at other restaurants, but like it'd be because it was independently. It was an independent company that used like or like owned and controlled the ice. Not owned. It was different than all the other companies that fix all the other equipment.
Okay, gotcha.
So like when we had to call, when the ice machine went down, we had to call a specific company to have them come out, and it's always like a thing where they couldn't be out there the next day, and unless you wanted to pay them extra, and it was a hassle. But
interesting. Brendan R. Hello. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here. For the Jack, Jeff Lemire Maze book is my favorite works that I've read so far from him. I've not read that one. Let me jot that one down.
That's a great one too. He writes and draws that one. Underwater Welder was a really good one too.
I hear a lot about that one. Yeah. The last thing I read by him was Little Monsters. That vampire. I really enjoyed that too. Have you read that one?
Yeah, that was great. Actually, Paperback Dan sent me, I think, like the first 8 issues and singles.
Okay.
And I like that series a lot too. That's with Dustin Nguyen, right? The artist.
I'm not too sure.
I think it was because he's the artist on Descender also. Oh man, he just blew up on Instagram today. Dustin Nguyen. Do you see him go like
Dustin
nuclear?
Nguyen.
He went nuclear on Marvel, talking about how they don't pay artists and things.
Oh, geez.
Talk about comic book journalism. That's like the hot topic today.
Yeah, right. Kane is doing well. How are you, gentlemen? I am doing well. Thank you.
Doing good, Kane. Thank you.
Paperback Dan, Captain Underpants is top tier. Loved it as a kid. I never got into it as a kid. I feel like, I don't know how long it's been, but the big thing when I was a kid was Diary of the Wimpy Kid. And,
Okay, that was when I was a kid is when Captain Underpants first came out. I guess that's how old I am. And my mom wouldn't let me order them through the little catalog you get in class. Yeah. She's like, "No, that sounds stupid." I was like, "Mom, like I want to." It is all poop and fart jokes. Sure. Like my son's a huge Dave Pilkey fan. He loves Captain Underpants, and that's all it is poop and fart jokes, which is fine. Like my kid's very smart. He's a gifted student in his classes and things. Like I don't care. But so if he wants to read some poop and fart jokes, also like have at it. But
yeah, why not? A Fifth of Jack this week. Fish Flies came out. Okay, awesome. Bannockcourt, thank you for being here. The McDonald's ice cream machine issue is actually one of the biggest examples of the issues with the right to repair. Okay. Paperback Dan, glad Taylor actually read the books I sent in.
Of course, Dan.
Dustin had massive balls for that. So what did he say? He came out and said that
he just
Marvel
like
doesn't pay?
He went on this nuclear post of on Instagram where it was kind of like the ramblings of Madman. I kind of wish he took a step back and like thought about what he was writing, because it doesn't make a lot of sense at times. Right. He was basically just going on about how Marvel offered him a gig and it was like way beneath it. The work that he's going to put into was like below minimum wage, basically, like the time it was going to take him to do. And he's like, basically, I think he literally says, F Marvel, I'm not going to work for you. And he's like, I don't care if this means I can't ever work for Marvel again. And I don't know that the last time I don't know that he's ever done. Someone in the chat, has he ever done interiors at Marvel? I know he's done interiors at DC. His biggest series he's done independently, or there's the word independent. He did an Image was Descender, Ascender with Jeff Lemire, Little Monsters, and I know he's done some DC work before. But I think the most damning thing was someone shared that Zoe Thorogood, which I think you're a fan of, right?
I love Zoe Thorogood.
Yeah, she shared in the midst of this that Marvel approached her about doing a character concept. So basically the gig was that they just wanted her to design a character, costume and all, and they're going to pay her $100. That was it. And she's like, whatever. Like, I think it was early in her career, and she's like, whatever, sure, $100, I'll do it. And she did this character concept drawing up of like, like what you see like the back matter of books sometimes, where it's like the character costume from the front and from the back. And she drew it up and sent it to Marvel, got her $100. And then a couple years later, they used that on a cover, on a variant cover. They didn't tell her they're going to use it for it. They didn't tell her, like, no warning at all. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if she alleged they didn't pay or anything for the variant cover. I don't think they did. I could be wrong on that part, but they just use the artwork they gave her, which they own. Like that's the hubbub about Marvel is like, you do something for them, they own it. They can put on t-shirts or whatever. Yeah. So I took the concept art, literally the same page, like the character from the front, character from the side. I think it was like a Captain Britain, Spider-Man type character. I don't know. And they put it on a variant cover of the character design like that. And I guess the worst part about the story is that people were ripping Zoe Thorogood to shreds over this thing. Like, this is a terrible cover. Like, this doesn't even look like a cover composition. Like, why would you do this? And she's like, that wasn't a cover I did. I did a character concept. They then used it for a cover. And they only paid me $100, by the way. But they're just ripping their shreds over it. And it was like, that was the worst story that came out today, I think, of this whole thing.
That's awful. Wow.
Yeah.
That's so, yeah, I'm a big fan of Zoe Thorogood. I love her artwork, but yeah, that's horrible that Marvel did that to her. I know she's been doing some work with DC recently with some variant covers, I believe. She's one of those writers, artists that, like, if her name's on it, I'm gonna buy it for sure. Like, she's definitely one of those. I just think she's so talented.
She's awesome, and she's working on a new book now, which I don't know if you follow her on social media, but her brother passed away.
Yeah,
She's very
yeah,
public. I'm not speaking out of school here. She's very public about this.
yeah, she is. Yeah.
But like this new book seems to be dealing with a lot with that, and she does dealing with like mental health and like autobio and personal stuff like so well.
She does. Yeah.
That like I can't wait to read this. I guess I don't know if that sounds morbid or anything because subject matter, but another odd thing that's less morbid about her is that she is dating this guy that I'm from Indiana, and
Mhm.
this guy was in this great band I used to listen to called Harley Poe. And the lead singer of the band is who she's dating now. So this guy from Indiana, she's like British, she's from England.
Yes. Yeah.
And this guy from Indiana that used to be in this punk band I listened to is dating. It's this weird thing. I was like,
It's a
when I
weird
saw them on
connection.
social media together, I'm like, what the heck? Like, I don't know
Well,
either of
that's
them
funny.
personally, but it was just like this weird thing. It's like, I know you from this thing and you from this thing, and now you're
Yeah. I believe. I think I can't remember his name. He's a sculptor, I believe. Now, I think that's what he works on mostly.
Yeah, I know his name is Joe something or other, but
Yeah. Yeah.
the band Harley
He-
Poe is great. It's
What's
like
that?
his band Harley Poe is really great. It's like this kind of horror vibed like I don't know, like acoustic punk kind of band. Like they're really good. I like them.
Interesting. I'm not huge into punk. Although I will say I haven't really given them a shot, given punk a shot. So maybe I'll have to ask you another time for some good recommendations or something for punk to get into that. I like a lot of old school music, a lot of like old rock. I'm not a huge music guy though in general. I will say that. Like I really only listen to it in the car and that's it. Like I'm all over the place when it comes to music.
Yeah.
Let's see. F the Jack, May's book hit hard if you parent, especially. Yes, it was for Little Monster being done by Dustin.
Yeah.
Dustin, he did the Jeff Lemire Batman and Robin, right?
Oh yeah. They did that.
Yeah.
Robin and Batman, I think it was called.
Yeah, something like I haven't read it. I heard it was actually really good, so I do
Yeah.
want to check that out at some point. Paperback Dan Taylor, did you take your son to see Dogman?
I did. Dogman is like his other favorite comic.
Mhm.
And he's read every single volume, and we went to see the movie, and the movie's actually, so I've read a lot of Dogman with him. The movie's actually does a really good job of like having all the inside jokes and like the like comic book lettering and things. Like it really did a good job of adapting the the book itself. But yeah, we saw it and he loved it. I thought it was great.
So it's a movie that adults can enjoy too. It's like one of those kid movies.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool.
The concept of Dogman's hilarious. Anyways, when I first started reading it with him, I'm like, because he started reading when he was like 5 or 6, and it's like this police officer and this dog get into an accident, and then they realize that the head of the dog is going to work, but the body of the dog's dead, and the body of the police officer is going to work, but the head's dead. So they have to like literally cut off the head and put it on the body of the. And like, I was like, this is a wild concept for a kid's book.
It is,
but also kind of cool, and
it works.
Yeah.
Interesting. I've not read Dogman. Is that done by the same person that does Captain Underpants? Do you know?
Yeah, Dave Pilkey.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I haven't read either. Like I said, I kind of skipped Captain Underpants when I was a kid for some reason. Diary of the Wimpy Kid was all the rage, which I do enjoy. I do think it's interesting because that's kind of similar to comics. It's like graphic storytelling.
Yeah.
Diary of the Wimpy Kid. Paperback Dan, great question for the stream. What are some writers/artists that are still going whose name gets you to buy the book? That is a good question.
I feel like I have a lot of them.
Okay.
Noah Van Sciver for sure.
Okay.
Anything he does, I'll buy. They're still working today. Because I love so many older comics. I'm trying to think of current creators. Mike Allred, anything he does, he's my favorite artist that's still going today for sure.
Interesting. Okay.
So anything Mike Allred draws. Tom Scioli is another one. I don't know if you read anything by Tom Scioli.
What has he written?
He's he came out with the GoBots series.
Okay.
His most famous works are his GoBot series. He did Fantastic Four Grand Design. He did a G.I. Joe's versus Transformers series. And then he also did the comic book biography of Stan Lee and then another comic biography of Jack Kirby.
Okay.
His most
I know
recent
all
series
that.
he's working on currently, though, is Godzilla Monster Piece Theater. And it's this
Hmm.
mashup of Godzilla and these old Great American Novel type things. So it's like Godzilla and Sherlock Holmes or Godzilla and the Great Gatsby.
Interesting. That's a wild idea.
Yeah, his comics are just like pure fun. Like he makes
Okay.
fun comics. Like so many good things coming from him. Anything his name comes up on, I'll buy.
Awesome. For me, like I said, Zoe Thorogood for sure. Daniel Warren Johnson, I really like.
Daniel Warren Johnson for me.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips, those are always great. I like James Tinian the Fourth quite a bit too. There's Will McPhail, who I think his only graphic novel comic is in, but if he makes another book, I would definitely buy that without knowing anything about it. I really like his art style, his cartoony style that he does. So those are mine. I think your mic got unplugged. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. There we go.
There you go.
I tapped the mute button. Are you more guided in your comic book reading by like the writers or the artists?
Writers usually.
Okay.
Yeah. Because for me, and I'm curious to know if this is what it is for you too, or the opposite. I tend to I can forgive not so great artwork for a good story. If the story's really great and the artwork's I'm just not loving it, whether it be I don't want to say bad, but I'm just not a fan of it. I will still enjoy that comic. So I'm curious for you, what's
I used to be the same way as you. Like in my like teen, early 20 years when I was reading comics, I always followed writers. So like Brian Michael Bendis was a big one.
Sure.
Like Jeff Johns, Teen Titans. Like funny enough, I haven't read a lot of Jeff Johns stuff, like his main DC stuff, but his Teen Titans was a huge thing for me in my teen years. But as I got older and especially now, I definitely am more art oriented. Like I want to see cool, interesting art more than I want to see. Like I would rather that than reading a good story with like Marvel DC's typical Stuart Eminem clone type artwork where everything's like photorealistic and things. Like
yeah.
In general, like I don't like photorealistic looking art. Like I'm not the biggest Alex Ross fan. It's like the controversial opinion I always have, but although I will say Alex Ross from like the time that he started doing like the Immortal Hulk covers to present day is like my favorite stuff that he's ever done.
Interesting.
Because he's starting to get away from just the photorealism and start to get into some different things. Especially like Fantastic Four Full Circle. I don't know if you've read that.
I have not read it. I do want to read that.
His artwork in that book is amazing. I love his artwork in that. But I love a Jack Kirby. Like Jack Kirby's like stylized and like you can know it's his comic right away, and he pushes the figure drawing. Like the hands might look a little too big or things like that, but it's like impactful and there's like an energy to it that I really enjoy. I'm a big Rob Liefeld fan. I know that's like a controversial opinion. Obviously he pushes the figure into all kinds of different directions that people give him crap for, but I prefer that energy rather than same thing. Like people gravitate towards with Daniel Warren Johnson. Like he's not the greatest figure drawer. Like he's not drawing like these perfectly scientific figures, but there's like so much energy to his drawing that like when you read a Daniel Warren Johnson comic, there's like it's different than anything else on the stands.
Absolutely.
So definitely cool art's what I gravitate towards more than the story.
Interesting. Yeah, I will say if it's great art and maybe the story's not so great, I will still probably check it out if I really love the artwork. But that's interesting. You're not crazy about Alex Ross.
Again, his current day stuff is my favorite of his, but it just like the photorealistic art is just like I don't know. Like it never did anything for me. I'd rather just I don't know. It's like watching a movie or something, you know. Like I want comics to be comics.
I just recently reread Marvels, and I think in that book is some of my favorite Alex Ross artwork, and I think it really works well with that story.
Yeah, he's a tremendous artist.
Yeah.
This isn't me saying he's a bad artist. It just doesn't.
Sure.
It's just not my thing, I guess. But
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I just like, I don't know. I want comics to be comics, and I prefer, even like, I have a lot of issues with modern day coloring as well. Anybody that has talked to me, I go on this rant a lot, but like recently I was reading Bendis Avengers for the first time. Like, I haven't read Bendis's Avengers run, and I'm slowly getting through it. They're okay comics. It's just something I've wanted to read. But like, the coloring in those comics is so awful to me. It's like everything's brown, and it's because they're trying to go for this like realistic vibe, right? But if you look at like old Silver Age and Bronze Age comics, when I loved that era of comics, when like they were like more flat colors, but things were like more colorful. There's more color to it.
Right.
It wasn't just all browns because it was trying to look realistic or whatever. So I don't know.
Interesting. Okay, that's fair. Before we go any further, I do want to be conscious of your time. Do you have a time limit? We've been going for a little over an hour now, so I just want to be.
I go for like 20 more minutes or so.
Sure. Okay, great. Let me see here. We have Alexander Miller, aka the Comic Central. Hope you're doing well. Alexander also says, "Diary of a Wimpy Kid is good. I finally agree with you on something, Labruski." Very true. We finally agree. Paperback Dan adds, "I often go to stories for writers, but stay for the artist. A bad story with excellent art will still keep me engaged." Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if a bad story with excellent. I don't know. I guess it's a toss up for me. It's a toss up. A fifth of Jack. When I hear the name of Jack Kirby, I immediately think of Taylor and his love for Kirby. Need to grab the Fourth World omnibuses. Though there's also absolutes for those, right?
Yeah, there's 2 absolute volumes, or the big Fourth World. That was my first omnibus I ever owned. It was a Fourth World.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because I was getting back into comics at the time, and I just love the idea of having the entirety of that saga in one cover.
Sure.
I'm kind of a snob with these things, so I've since gone back. There's older versions they did, like they're 4 volumes, they're standard size hardcovers that collects the whole thing, but it's on this like the newsprint paper. It's like a more matte paper, and like I think the colors look a lot better on that older paper. So that's how I own Fourth World now, and it's one of my favorite series ever. But a fifth of Jack Gaming. Thank you so much. That's like one of the best compliments ever. I love Jack Kirby. He's the goat of comics. I can go on and on about Jack Kirby.
I have not. I don't think I've read a single Jack Kirby comic. I don't believe I might have. So where should I start with Jack Kirby? Because I really do need to dive into that.
I mean, I think the 2 best places to start would be Fourth World or his Fantastic Four run.
Okay.
Him and Stanley did the first 102 straight issues of Fantastic Four with no breaks. There's no other fill-in artist or fill-in writer in any of those 102 issues. That in itself is great. There's like a 9-issue run in the middle of that too, which if you're trying to 102 issues is a big project for me to give you. Yeah. But there's a 9-issue run in there that's like the best 9-issue run of comics ever in Marvel or DC, and it's like I want to say it starts with like issue 45 where like the Inhumans are introduced, and then you get to the Galactus trilogy where Silver Surfer and Galactus are introduced, like their first appearance. And then issue 51 is This Man, This Monster, which is like Jack Kirby and Stanley both cite that as like their one favorite single issue comic ever. And that's actually the story that informed Alex Ross for Full Circle. So side note, if you get like the new version of Full Circle, where it's like the big oversized hardcover.
Yes. Yeah.
It includes that issue in it.
Okay.
Because his story in there kind of spins off of that issue.
Okay, gotcha.
So you have the Inhumans, you have the Galactus trilogy, then you have This Man, This Monster, and then you get the debut of Black Panther. All in that 9-issue run. It's like Jack Kirby's just introducing all these great characters that are still with us today. Yeah. That's just magnificent. But Fourth World, if you're going to get into it, I think the best way to go now would probably be the 2-volume absolutes. Like those are beautiful looking books. And I advise, because what he did was he had 4 series going at once. He had Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen was one of them. That was the one that was like, depending on who you ask or what interview you see, the myth is that Jack Kirby's like, what's the worst selling title DC has? Because this is when he was working for Marvel created all the Silver Age with Stan Lee and things, and then this is him going to DC. So when he steps into DC, he's like, "What's the worst selling title?" And they're like, Superman pals Jimmy Olsen. So he grabbed that, and then he created 3 brand new series, and it was Mr. Miracle, New Gods, and the Forever People. So his idea was for these 4 series to run concurrently, like basically one every 2 weeks or one every week, and they would all tie together into this big saga that creates what you know now of like Darkseid and Orion and Mr. Miracle and all those characters. So my long-winded answer, if you're gonna read it, my advice to everybody is like the Superman pals Jimmy Olsen issues, I think they're great. But if you're trying to get through like the Fourth World Saga for the first time, those can be kind of hindering to you. So if you're and that's what kind of kicks off the thing. So if you read it and you're kind of reading those issues and you're like, what's Taylor talking about? These aren't very good. I just skip over the Jimmy Olsen issues and just read the rest of it.
Gotcha.
But I think those are tremendous though.
Gotcha. Okay, great. I will make sure to try to check those out eventually. Are these collected in like trade paperbacks? Do you know, or only?
They are, in a kind of confusing way though. So, like I said, those issues all like went one after the other. So, like an issue of Jimmy Olsen, and then Forever People, and the New Gods, and then Mr. Miracle, and they all tied together, and informed each other. But DC recently came out with paperbacks that collected like all the Mr. Miracle issues in one paperback, all the New Gods in one paperback, all so it's like separate.
Sure.
Which I think you can still read it that way. I've always kind of wanted to read it in that experience to see if it's a different, because I like to read things in different contexts and different ways to pull things differently from them. So those are the paperbacks that they have available, but the absolutes are probably the best way right now to collect them all in the reading order.
Gotcha.
And the best stuff of the Fourth World is in volume 2. So
okay, great, thank you. Matt joins us. Thank you for joining. I'm sure you already know this, but Taylor Talks Comics is awesome. A good dude and great at reviews, a deep thinker in dissecting the art, plot points, artists, etc. of comics. I agree completely.
Thank you so much, Matt. That's amazing.
Yes, that's very nice, Matt. Banacor asked a question. What comic character would you love to see get their own game in the caliber of the Batman Arkham series or Spider-Man PS4? Now, do you play video games at all?
Not much. I play a Nintendo Switch with my son a lot, but not much. My one hobby and my time usually is just comics.
Sure.
If any other extra free time is spent usually with my son doing what he wants, like his kind of hobbies, which for better or worse are things that I'm not into, but I have to find out ways to get into them. Like he's really into like Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon and things. When I became a dad, I told my wife, I was like, I have like 5 years to brainwash him into liking the things that I like before he goes off to kindergarten and all his friends teach him about all these things that I don't like.
Right.
And it happened that exact way. Like I was never into Pokemon when I was a kid. He loves Pokemon. I was never into Yu-Gi-Oh. He loves Yu-Gi-Oh. So it's like he wants to get into like Dungeons and Dragons now. And it's like I was never that guy either. But I want to embrace his hobbies because I always wish that was like I grew up loving pro wrestling and comics when I was a kid, but my parents really never embraced that. I mean, they would support it, like they'd buy me action figures and comics, but like I wanted to share in with these things. So I'm learning a lot about Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh that I never knew about. But any of my free time outside of comics is based on what he wants to do, basically.
Gotcha. I see. Okay. Well, what character do you think would make for a good video game? DC or Marvel? What do you think that we haven't seen before?
I think a really cool Fantastic Four game would be cool.
That would be cool. I know there was one, maybe two, with the movie tie-ins. In the early 2000s on the GameCube. I remember playing those, but those weren't really good. But I do agree. I think there could be
even
a way
like going through, because like again, the 102 issue run of Kirby and Stan Lee, like there's all of the Marvel characters that we know that were introduced throughout that run would make a really cool game of like that's what you wanted in a video game, right? Like different levels, introducing new characters, fighting new villains and things. I think that having that inspired by those early issues with those early appearances would be cool.
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. Marvel, they should hire you to write it. I think that'd be cool.
Sign me up.
That'd be cool.
I'll do that in a heartbeat.
Let's jump around here. Matt adds, Lee and Kirby's Fantastic Four is the foundation of the whole Marvel universe. It's great. Okay, all right. I will have to bump that up. I wonder if I could read it digitally. I bet
Oh
I
yeah,
can.
I'm sure.
Um,
I mean, you could definitely read it on the Marvel app. It's all there. I don't know if Libby would have it. I definitely know most of those are on Hoopla, but
okay,
you said you
I'll have
don't
to
have
check
access
on
to that.
Libby. My mom, she's a librarian actually for my local library, so I'm sure she could maybe order a copy of it or something.
Do you ever?
Um,
Do you have like a library? Like our library has a system where I can check out books from other libraries and they'll ship them to my library.
yeah,
Yeah, so you should be able to do that too.
yeah. I will.
And that, I
I'll
mean,
try.
that Fantastic Four stuff's been reprinted in a number of different formats: the omnibuses, epic collections, masterwork.
Actually, I just remembered too, actually, because I haven't used it yet. But they're, uh, I guess, as a substitute to Hoopla, uh, Mid York, which is just the upstate New York library system, they use Comic Plus. So if you have a library card, you can use Comic Plus, but
Oh,
it's not a very good app. I have it on my iPad, and it needs some work. But I wonder if I'll have to look and see if uh, Kirby's Fantastic Four one would be on there. I bet it would.
I don't
Um,
know if because we're in different areas of our Libby apps would be different, but it does look like they have the masterworks on there
okay, cool.
of that
Oh yeah,
run. So
I'll have to look into that and start reading that. Um, let's see. It's the fourth epic of Fantastic Four, right, Taylor? So I think this is about.
the 9 issue run I was talking about.
Yeah,
It could be. I have the omnibuses, and I know it's volume 2 of the omnibuses.
gotcha. Okay.
So fourth epic sounds about right. I think they do split on the epics actually, because I think one of the epics starts off with Black Panther. So I think it's like the 7 issues ends one epic, and the next epic volume starts off with Black Panther.
Interesting. Okay. Beyond Comics, I have the Kirby Fourth World Absolutes, and they're gorgeous. Still need to read Volume 2. Aren't those
Oh,
like some of the biggest absolutes there are? Like, aren't
yeah,
those
they're like
things?
800 pagers. Because
That's
the
crazy.
the omnibus was 1,500 pages, I think. But man, Beyond Comics, Volume 2 is the best stuff. So if you enjoyed Volume 1 at all, keep reading.
Yeah.
2 of my favorite like single issue comics of all time are in that Volume 2.
Wow. Wow. High praise. Bandicoot, doing a Fantastic Four game would be very cool. You could do the GTA 5 thing where you have multiple characters have their own stories and side missions, but they are all together on the main mission. Yeah, that would actually be super cool. Yeah, that's a great
And you can
idea.
even do like, because that's Fantastic Four is my favorite comic book, like comic title of Marvel or DC. I love
Okay.
Fantastic Four. But that's one of my favorite things about it. It's kind of what you're alluding to is that all the interactions with the characters. So you have like the 4 members, right? And you have like a husband-wife relationship in there. You have like a
Right.
best friend relationship with Ben and Reed in there. And then you have like Human Torch and Ben is kind of a new friendship. You have brother-sister friendship or relationship with Sue in the Human Torch. And then you have like a brother-in-law with Reed and Johnny. So it's like all these different interacting relationships. So if you even like do missions with like 2 of them over here, 1 of them over, like you can explore those things.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're almost out of time, but I do have a few more questions I want to try to get through. Let me ask you the question that's not comic book related or YouTube related or anything, because depending on your answer, it may be a very quick answer. But do you have any paranormal experiences?
Oh, I no.
Okay, there we go.
No, I don't know that I don't know that I believe in like ghosts and stuff. Like
Sure.
I guess it's one of those things that's never really intrigued me enough to think about. Like I love like movies that include that kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
it's not one thing that I don't judge people that do believe in it. It's just one thing that I'm just like, you know. But no, I don't think I've ever had any.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely skeptic. I don't I like to entertain ghost stories and the paranormal and stuff. Like I love a good ghost story around a
Yeah,
campfire. Like
of
that is
course.
amazing. But at the end of the day, I don't buy it, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but like I said, I do love a good ghost story. So that's why I kind of asked that question. And most of the people all the people I've had on the show so far and asked that question, most of them have said no. So
Oh,
so maybe it's just a bad question. I have to or rethink it or something. Have you read? Because James Tinian the fourth is now doing like an anthology series of like true paranormal books, Blue Book, and then he has another one, a sidebar, which I think is more, I don't know what it's about, but similar, nonfiction, true story.
Yeah. Again, I love those kinds of stories from a fictional standpoint. And I definitely, I think the Blue Book hardcover deluxe is coming out later this year.
I definitely
think you're right.
Yeah. Library edition. Yeah.
I haven't read a lot of Tinian, unfortunately, because everything I've read from him, I've enjoyed. I just haven't, I still haven't read Something That's Killing the Children. I feel like I'm the only comic book reader that hasn't read that yet.
You might be.
But like his Department of Truth is one of my favorite series that Image has come out with in the last few years. I absolutely adore that series. And I know Blue Book's kind of in the same vein a little bit. The art's definitely different because I think it's Michael Avon Oeming on the art.
Yes.
And he has more of like kind of an old school Silver Ages art, which I love.
He does. Yeah.
But Martin Simmons on Department of Truth has like a more of like Bill Sienkiewicz type style, which I also love. So I'm definitely excited about Blue Book, but James Tinian, I think I'm trying to think of what I've read from him. I know I've read Department of Truth, obviously.
He's
I read a little bit of his Detective Comics.
He did the Woods.
Yes, I haven't read that either.
That's really good. I would recommend that. I enjoyed that.
Oh, what did he do? World War, or what is it called? World Tree, or?
Yes, he did. Yes.
Yeah, that's
I haven't read
series.
it, but yes.
That's another series that's like kind of conspiracy theory-ish, I think, that I wanted to read.
I think that started out as like a Comixology exclusive, or I think it was something like that. But now it's being printed in actual books. So I think there's a trade paperback out there. So I haven't read that one, but I do want to. Also, Nice House on the Lake, I would recommend.
Oh yeah, that's another one I want to read too.
Yeah.
He's one of those writers that I definitely want to read stuff of. I just haven't got to it. But
sure, yeah, no, that's fair. All right, let's see. A fifth Jack. Oh, I have a couple of paranormal experiences. Granted, it wouldn't be a summer blockbuster, but it's something that was weird to experience. Well, when I have you on the show again, Adam, I will have to ask you that.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, I'll finally get a answer. A couple other comic book questions. What's a comic book that you would love to be adapted into a movie or TV show?
Ooh.
And there may not be, like Bunk. I had Bunk on a few weeks ago, and he said there's really not one.
Yeah.
I like mediums to kind of be separate. So if that's kind of how you feel about it too.
I definitely lean that way.
Sure, yeah.
Like, even like I said, I had a podcast a number of years ago that was like exclusively talking about these adaptations.
Right.
But now as I get older, it's like I'm not the biggest into them. Like I'm not against them at all, and I'm super stoked for the Superman movie this year.
Me too. Yeah.
James Gunn, huge James Gunn fan. Like
me too.
James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy is one of my favorite trilogies of all time.
Likewise.
Absolutely love that series. I think it's even underrated because people don't appreciate it the way they should. But so him doing Superman and him spearheading DC, like I'm all in for. So I'm excited about that. I am excited about Fantastic Four just to see if we can finally get a great adaptation of that. But as far as like a comic that hasn't been adapted that I would like to see, man. I'm trying to think. What do you have an answer? Well, I just want to look up books I've read recently. Maybe I have a good answer for this.
Well, one of my answers is Criminal, but we are getting a Criminal TV show.
Oh yeah, we are.
That's coming out soon. I think this summer at some point. I would really, and I don't think it would happen. Maybe it will eventually. I would like to see a Saga adaptation. I think it can be done, and I think Brian K. Vaughan has talked about how he doesn't want that to happen, or something like that. I know he's mentioned it before, but I think it can be done.
He says him and Fiona Staples have purposely made that series to try to make it unadaptable.
Yeah,
they wanted to live only as a comic, which I commend.
Yeah, me too, absolutely. But I feel like as an animated show, like something like Invincible, it could absolutely be done successfully as well. But I do think it could be done in live action too with the right creative team. Let's see, Banacor. I think they did Jonah Hex dirty with that old movie. Interesting. Okay.
I think they could definitely do that'd be a cool series.
Yeah, I'm Gotham Central. I think I would love to see something like that adapted. Um, I think you could take that kind of concept and turn it to its like own thing in the TV
What
sphere.
about
Because
like
I think that's what it
Ice
would.
Cream Man?
Ooh,
I think that'd be a cool one.
that would be a good one. That would be
But
tough to do.
I do kind of lean towards like what Bunk was talking about. I do love that as just a comic though.
Yeah,
So,
that's fair.
but but if a Ice Cream Man adaptation came out, which I think I think they're in talks of doing that. Maybe I don't
It
know.
would make sense. Very popular
But
series. Yeah.
I would like that because I do love this. Have you read Ice Cream Man?
I have not
Okay.
all of it. I have the first deluxe, so I have read 12 issues or whatever is
Yeah,
collected in there.
because I do love that they're like one and done horror stories, but it also tethers into this like larger universe.
It does, yeah.
So I feel like as like having each episode be kind of a different thing, but also serve a greater universe into itself would be a really cool concept.
I would agree. Yeah, that's a great answer. Let's see. We have Paperback Dan. Brian K. Vaughan is probably turned off by what happened with Why the Last Man. You could be right.
And Runaways, because I don't think Runaways was the biggest series. It was like Hulu exclusive, and it didn't really get a lot of praise. It's probably. And didn't Paper Girls get one season?
Paper Girls did. Yeah, and that I don't think did well either.
Yeah, so he's probably not stoked about a lot of those things.
I think too with Brian K. Vaughan, I do think because at least with Saga, there is a lot of cliffhangers and at the end of each issue. So that storytelling, it may not translate as well to TV or movie, you know.
It would not work as like the Netflix model, which I hope they get away from this, where they drop a whole season at one time on the same day. But doing it weekly, those cliffhangers could work a lot.
Well, it could, yeah, but I think it'd be tough to do. Like if they did like an animated show, which I'm kind of picturing, I feel like it would still be tough to do like a whole issue. Each issue is like one episode.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
But I bet they could make it work. And I think you're right. If they did it week to week, like they're doing like Invincible, I think that cliffhanger could be very effective. Yeah, absolutely. Paperback Dan, I'm currently reading East and West. That's a series I need to read, and I'm curious if that would adapt well into like an HBO series. I've not read East and West, so I can't speak to that. Taylor, what are your thoughts?
That would make a great HBO show. That's a great answer. Have you read anything from Jonathan Hickman?
Not really. I've read. I have. I read the Ultimate Invasion, the trade that like sets up the Ultimate Universe that he's doing now. I've read that. I've read someone like Secret Warriors, but I think that's it. I haven't read too much by him.
His Fantastic Four run is really great.
I have read, actually, I take that back. I have read some of that. Yeah.
But East to West is like his typical Hickman thing where he drops a lot of concepts at once, and for like the first like half the series or maybe even 2/3 of the series, you're kind of confused like where he's going. But then by the end of it, as long as you like trust him to get there, he ties it all together really beautifully. And then by the end of it, you're like totally satisfied as a reader. Like, he doesn't like leave a lot of loose ends. Like it's all tied up nicely. All your questions are answered, kind of thing.
Gotcha.
East to West is very much similar to that.
Yeah, that's a series. I know the deluxes are, those are out of print, and I don't know they're ever going to be
right. They just came out the compendium just came out this week though. That collects the whole series.
Oh, no kidding. Okay, well, I think that's how I'll read it then. If I were to jump into that, or I guess I could go the trade paperback route as well. Matt says, "Thanks for the stream, guys." Well, thank you for tuning in. I really
thank you, Matt.
That. Paperback Dan, yeah, nobody knows Runaways exist. I do. I have actually watched the first couple episodes because it was on Hulu, I believe.
Yeah.
So I do remember watching the first couple episodes, but I did fall off of it.
I think it surprisingly ran for a second season too, but it never.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It never got any buzz at all.
No, it was same with Cloak and Dagger. That was another one that was, I think, just on Hulu. And
yeah, like, and Kevin Feige. There really is weird things where Kevin Feige was like, "That's not in the MCU. Like, it's not continuity or whatever." So it's like, it's like
who knows? Bannockor, a current MCU anthology series that covers stories of just normal people who live in the MCU, like a gas station owner who finds an abandoned, how do you say that word?
Chitauri.
Weapon and turns his life upside down. Yeah, that would be interesting.
That'd be
I think
cool.
so. I actually, because I just read Marvels recently, I did a video on it, and at the end of the video, I talked about how I think there could be a great adaptation of a TV series or
Mhm.
movie, and you take current events that happen in the MCU and just kind of make it into a Marvels where we follow this journalist or whoever. And I think that could really work well. East or West Compendium is out tomorrow.
Oh,
Awesome.
okay.
Thank you. If you want the trade paperbacks of East to West, just try it out. I could send you mine. I plan on upgrading the compendium. Oh, you don't have to send me that. I do appreciate it. I'll read it online first, but I do appreciate that. Let me know what you think too when you do finish a paperback, Dan. I'd be curious to know. But I guess to kind of wrap things up here, I really appreciate you coming on, Taylor. It was a lot of fun. For those of you in the chat who are not subscribed, please do so. Link to his channel in the description below. He comes out with videos all the time. I feel like you come out with at least more than one weekly.
I tried to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You crank them out. Don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you. I always forget
Definitely.
to say that as well. Hit the like button, subscribe to my channel as well. But before you do that, or after you do that, make sure to check out Taylor Talks Comics. Any final remarks, Taylor, before we end here?
Just everyone keep an open mind about comics and explore the weirdness and the cool different comics that you've never even read before.
Awesome.
Thank you, Fifth of Jack
I
Gaming.
love that. And yes, thank you, Fifth of Jack Gaming.
Because this medium has so much to offer. Like it's so many, it can go so many different directions. And it's not only superheroes, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting because I started out reading the first comic that really got me into comics was Superman Red Sun. And I don't read Superman stories, or I haven't really read any other Elseworld stories. I took my own path, I guess, you know, and I think that's the beauty of comics is there's just so much to offer and so many different things. So, and then also my Discord here, if anyone would like to join that. And then Taylor also has a Discord too. I did forget to put the link to that. So
they can find it on my channel. It's under all my videos too.
Perfect. There we go. So. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and we will catch you in the next Off the Cuff. Take care.